But I think what I've come to discover is that the best of both worlds, connecting students with these great educational experiences and being in a community, it really happens at a boarding school. When you're at a university, kids don't want to hang out with their teachers. And at a place like KUA, I come home from a trip, be it Singapore or Dubai, and my wife is hosting dinner for students in our living room. And that balance of, being in a really tight-knit community. I started in admissions by way of college admissions. I went to the University of Chicago and got to work right out of college there in the Office of College Admissions at the University of Chicago. And I loved it. But I think what I've come to discover is that the best of both worlds, connecting students with these great educational experiences and being in a community, it really happens at a boarding school. When you're at a university, kids don't want to hang out with their teachers. And at a place like KUA, I come home from a trip, be it Singapore or Dubai, and my wife is hosting dinner for students in our living room. And that balance of, being in a really tight-knit community and at the same time being able to connect with people around the world is something I find endlessly fun, pretty unique to boarding school admissions. I'm lucky. I was looking before this call. I've been to 48 countries at this point. If you would have told me growing up as a kid in Florida there were 48 countries and that I would go to them, I would have thought you were totally crazy. I also bring a fair bit of empathy to this work. I was an international student myself at 2 points in my life, so I was lucky enough to go to a boarding program in the UK, and then I completed my graduate work in Canada. So, certainly there were no language barriers, maybe some food barriers I had to adjust to, but I understand the paperwork and the details and the just not totally being at home yet that comes with being an international student. And I know how powerful it is. I know the impact it's had on my life to be able to step outside what I know. And I love the bravery, the curiosity, and the energy that international students bring to our campus as well. So KUA, like, many boarding schools, but we are boarding by design. We are 80% a boarding school. Most of our students live here on campus. What's unique about KUA is as you approach campus, you're driving on what is literally on New England Main Street. Main Street bisects our campus, and you will see all of these faculty houses dotting the road. Behind those faculty houses are small dorms, really, pretty cozy. It's not uncommon for us to have, 12, 13, 14 students living in a dorm, not the 50, 60, 70, 80 that you might hear about at other schools. We want it to feel like a home. And so that's going to be different right off the top. Most of our students live in double dorms. There are some singles, some students who do live in, a room by themselves, and a few students who elect to live in a triple. They can't decide which of their friends they want to live with. And so you might see some upperclassmen who live in 3-to-a-room. But I would say generally, overwhelmingly, our students live 2-to-a-room. We just opened a brand new dorm for boys and a brand new dorm for girls this year, part of our commitment to make sure that those spaces are really joyful and places that kids want to be. That's a funny question, right? We get asked all the time, what makes your school unique? And I think that it starts with every student who comes to visit and what they feel when they come to campus. I can tell you when I came to visit KUA for the first time, and I was a little lost, I wasn't sure where I was going, and students, very quickly picked their heads up and they were like, "Welcome to campus. What do you need? Where are you visiting from? Let me walk you to the dining hall." For me, there was a unique sense of pride of place, a sense of community that bounded everyone together. For me, though, that's unique and worth it. And some things are not unique, right? I mean, we're 212 years strong. We've been doing what we do for a really long time. And so there's this nice balance, I think, of being unique when that is important. At the same time, if you're looking at coming to high school from 4, 5, 6, 7,000 miles away, maybe it's okay that some of it's not so unique, but really time-tested, developed, thoughtful. And so maybe that's unique in its own way, in a time when a lot of schools seem to be very gimmicky and, trying new things every 5 minutes. KUA is a place that is really thoughtful about how kids think and learn. And so that doesn't feel all that unique to me, but I realize, unfortunately, that is unique in a world where a lot of schools make their uniqueness around this fancy building or adding this, program that no one really wanted. What makes KUA unique is listening to students and providing the experiences that are going to set them up for the future. It's a tricky question. I would say, KUA is certainly unique in having a global approach. We are certainly an American boarding school. We are in the US and providing students from around the world a way into imagining and seeing and experiencing life in the US. That being said, there's a deep curiosity and pride of how diverse this community is. Many boarding schools, particularly in what we call the Lakes region up here from, St. Paul's to KUA, are not as diverse and coming from as many countries and holding as many passports as we do. We're lucky. Even our day students, the students that go home at night, because of their affiliation and often their connection to Dartmouth, hold many different passports and nationalities themselves. The region that we're in is one of immense diversity and opportunity. We try as often as we can to weave that into what we do, whether that's global literature classes, lots of interesting electives this year in history and music in particular that really try to call that out. Our arts department in particular is often really bridging those gaps and showcasing performing arts from around the world, as well as what might be more popular here at home. And then, I think just a really strong sense of what we call community action groups, or opportunities for students to socialize and connect as students from wherever they may be from. And so we will have, a Muslim students group, a Jewish students group, and they're active and they're vital and they're busy. Many of our students from Asia took part in Mid-Autumn Festival not that long ago, and the Lunar New Year festivities on campus culminate with a fantastic fireworks show over the mountains. And so we try to pause and reflect on those big milestone events and just make time for an awareness of the 27 plus nationalities that make this community whole. I think my favorite tradition at KUA is broadly the idea that traditions can be made as quickly as they can. So we say at KUA that we are unbound by tradition, 212 years old. And yet, I think a huge part of what makes KUA an exciting place is it's not daunting to come in and make it your own and leave the place better for you having been here, but to put your fingerprints on it. So students are coming up with new clubs, new activities, new days, new events all the time. Of course, I love fall at KUA. Tomorrow we'll take the day off school to go be together on the top of the mountain here that is adjacent to campus and enjoy the nice weather and be with each other. I love how we all come out for not just sports games, of course we're great at those, but also the fine and performing and visual arts, and just the level of support that students give each other here, that is a tradition unto itself. But I would say I love how quickly new traditions can spring up. So we had a club fair recently. I was walking around and listening to all the pitches. Students have to pitch their new clubs and activities. And every year they change a little bit, because every year we have a different student body who wants different things. And so this year there's a sustainable investing club, and there's a robotics club, and a drone club, and a ping pong club. And I love that every year they're just a little bit different, because students find things that speak to them. I'm really proud of the vibrant international student organizations and clubs that we have on campus. We're 24% international students from nearly 30 countries. And so there's just an overwhelming, unique amount of diversity here, and students find all sorts of ways to get involved on that front as well. I'll offer two examples of how KUA exists within the community that I think are really pretty special. One, note where we are. So we're in northern New England, about 2 hours from Boston, but we're about, maybe 20 kilometers from Dartmouth College, an Ivy League school, and we're thrilled for what that can make possible for our students, whether that's going to see Dartmouth sports, or that's going to the art museum on campus, or going to a lecture at Dartmouth. And so we're very lucky that our community is so intellectually rich, culturally diverse as a result of living where we live. Our students are on an Ivy League college campus more than most, and coexisting within that environment pretty seamlessly right from their 9th grade year. The other way in which you might find KUA in the community is totally unique and not for everybody, but very distinctly KUA. A lot of schools talk about community service, and at KUA we really live and breathe it. And one way in particular is the KUA Fire Brigade. So KUA is the only school in the US where students can volunteer to be members of the local fire department. So when there's a fire in town or an emergency to tend to, our students are full members of the Meriden Fire Department, and they could be taking an exam, they could be in the middle of class, giving a tour, and they leave what they're doing and they run to hit the fire truck and support their neighbors. And so we live in a somewhat rural community, part of the larger Upper Valley region, but that ability to know these streets and know these roads and serve your neighbors in that way is totally unique. Obviously forges some deep and meaningful connections with our region, and I think speaks to a uniquely KUA sense of citizenship, which is to say, step it up and do it.